Welcome back to the Terps of the Beast Coast. So we're here with my man Pino. We're going to be talking about Resin Cup, National Resin Cup. We're going to be talking about how we started this thing. But before we do that, I want to make sure that you guys are going to subscribe, like, share. Okay? So Pino, what's going on, man?
Not much, man. Now just to kick off, and as far as the topic, right, dealing with Resin Cup. We ended up starting Resin Cup. The conversation started at the middle, then like about September of last year.
Right.
And the purpose was of it too, because out of a lot of things, always smoking and stuff, like trying to ideas come around. So we were looking at kind of like how generally a lot of hash ended up being judged throughout competitions, and we wanted to do it as professional as possible. We wanted, if we were looking at it from the competitor standpoint, if I wanted my hash in whatever form to be judged, who would I like to be judged by? Would I like to be judged by somebody famous? Would I like to be judged by somebody from the people's, perspective, right? The people's choice. And there's no wrong thing, but our point ends up being we want active hash makers to actually be judging the competitors.
Definitely.
And first, right from the beginning, we are completely excluded out of judging, because not that we're not active hash maker, him specifically is the active hash maker, is that there's no bias. Right. We're not even in it. And the people that end up doing it are active hash makers. That being important, because to be an active hash maker ends up keeping you up with dealing with different techniques, different technologies are coming around, understanding how new testing is being done. Nothing against the OGs, because still some of the best in the world end up coming from like Morocco and Nepal, Afghanistan, compressed hash, right?
Old world hash.
World hash.
Right.
So with all that, we end up actually starting Resin Cup. And our very first event was February 6th in New York, which was kind of like an inaugural one, but the first one. And then we say the first one because we actually end up dealing with regions. So we end up jumping around. We started with the East Coast. We ended up moving far north into the Maine area. Then we ended up shooting to Michigan, which has amazing hash as well.
Yes,
and then finally, we ended up hitting Oklahoma.
Definitely.
Which was an accidental historic trip, to say the least. Like, it was like complete accident. We can get into that, and if we want to. Anyway,
we can definitely get into it, because it was an interesting vibe. Is how when we arrived, we felt this certain vibe. But yeah, we'll definitely get into that, man. So a little history fact: when I first started the Terps of the Beast Coast, this guy was the first guest, so it's full face that we're still rocking together, doing what we need to do in this community, and bring to you, the Hashishian, something that's more where I feel on the level when it comes to Resin Cup. Because as he mentioned, there's a lot of scrupulations, there's a lot of buy-in to judge something, where I feel as though that when it comes to anyone who puts the time and the work in, you definitely want somebody who has put the time in and the work in to look at your work, so you can be judged how you judge yourself, but now you're being judged amongst your peers, not just some fucking kit. But at the end of the day, I love Resin Cup, man, because we're connecting with a lot of hash makers who are truly about the resin and the passion of it. And we want to salute you for the time that you've done, making your hash, finding that pheno, taking that time out. But as far as getting started in New York, what about the New York vibe that you want to talk about when we did the first one? What else do you like about that one?
So the first thing I liked about it is immediately, it brought out because always a question like who's going to be judging, right? And since we were saying we had a strict thing about being an active hash maker, not I used to make hash back in the day. There's no diss on that one. It is what it is, and we appreciate the fact that you love the knowledge and expand your own. But we were looking for active hash makers, and It was the New York one was, just like you just felt kind of like this electricity out of it. It
Mm,
was a little bit different than all the other places, no necessarily, and each one has its own like vibe and its own feeling. And that's, I think, that's probably the most important part, that it's not about which region has the best, but the fact that we recognize that along with the hash, the vibe is different.
mm,
It's not, none of them were negative.
right.
None of them were negative. It just ended up being like just so electric when it came to the New York one.
Nice.
It's pretty good. I really like the New York
Yeah,
one.
it was a different, part of New York, out there in Long Island. Shout out to Long Island. Appreciate your support. Thank you guys for helping us out there in that matter. And we're still, looking for your continued support as we venture into National Resin Cup. But the vibe is a very important thing. We definitely have a different vibe, like you said, in each area we go to. Maine has like, another whole like environment to itself, because those guys have the potential to actually cross and create new flavors. And, as far as that goes, it's more of like a true passion for some of them out there. There is, the other type of stuff, but for the hash makers that I've met so far from Maine, they were just the things that they entered were just things that you don't normally find on the market. So they're bringing out the unique terps that we enjoy seeing, and the unique kind of breed, or I should say, cultivars that are being created to make that hash.
one.
What do you think?
Well, I mean, that's what makes our, this collaboration so great when we're creating like that, because you were looking at it from a true perspective of, what a hash maker has to go through and actually be able to get the very best out of that complete, because they got all these contaminants. And I was looking at it like, which is the plants that actually are able to wash. We were in from starting from I was in the beginning dealing with seeds and the genetics part, and you're at the end dealing with the dryness and the humidity and the storage part of it too. But what we learned was that it's not two, it's actually one. It's actually without one there is no other, without the other one there is no one. So to kind of find out what are those lists of different type of cultivars or strains, whatever you want to call them, to like that people active hash makers are making today. Which ones are they leaning to?
Right.
I hear some of them that are even like crossing, like I'm gonna take a little bit of this and like that, and making like these blends, which make it real super unique. Like,
Right.
how do you feel about that? You said like, I understand everybody's like heavy on that single source, and it's understandable. But let's say they took like, two of these and one of these, right, to actually, blend these type of terpene flavors together when you end up being washed. What do you feel about something like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's where the crosses come in regards to somebody did blend a batch with that batch, and they're like, well, we need to cross it that way we don't have to work as hard as it. But yeah, there's always blends when it comes to different types of cultivars. I mean, that's how some people create different kind of jams and different sauces, so you can get that unique experience. Because again, if you're single source and you're growing your own cultivars, at the end of the day you're trying to grow things that are not publicly on the market, right? You want to grow something that's unique. But the thing about when it comes to the hash world is that the cultivar selection is limited. It's not like everything washes when it comes to ice and water. But at the end of the day, what we've done is we're back crossing, or we might add something to it just to create, like you said, that unique flavor. So, you have a lot of funk or gas, but you want to add a little bit of dessert to it. So you might either add some strawberry, or you might add some more berries or some grapes. But it all depends on, what the person want that end result when it comes to the resin, as far as when it's executed. So yeah, one of the things that I loved about Maine definitely was that, as I said, people had a lot of in-house genetics that wasn't publicly on the market, which brought out some things that were just, great.
Delicious.
And
Oh,
and
even afterwards too, people were like, "Hey, look what else!" I was like, we were like, "Wow."
definitely,
Oof.
definitely. So,
Interrupts. Go ahead.
no problem. I was just going to jump into the next vibe, which is when we head out to Michigan, which was like, you already know they're in the same situation where cultivation is more openly for them. So they already were creating their in-house bread. And Michigan itself has its own hash culture. I mean, they have hash bash out there, which it's something that I have still not yet ventured out to, but hopefully next year, maybe we'll go out there and check it out. But, hash has been celebrated around the world for centuries. And, part of Resin Cup is to try to bring some of that celebration to the people so you can enjoy the hard work and the fruit and labor of what a hashishian goes through to create that, that flavor, that uniqueness that you guys like when you pick it up. So with that said, the other situation out in Oklahoma, that
Wait,
vibe.
let me touch on Michigan first, because you just kind of like flew over Michigan for me, my man.
Because I want to get to the vibe in Oklahoma.
Oh my
that
God.
was just,
mind you, like, so honestly, like this whole Resin Cup thing, right? We, because we were traveling from one place to another,
Yep.
and we were experiencing all this stuff. At the same time, I was kind of like handling like gene trader events
Yep.
too. So I was dealing with genetics and dealing with like hash. But something that I have to say about Michigan is that, we mentioned it before, and I keep mentioning, is that Michigan has this like, 2-part hash type of community. They're the OGs prefer to be more of the pressed and temple hash, and more of like the chillum type of smokers, and that shit's amazing. And then there's the new school ends up being more of the rosin, that fuel, that real buttery looking type, which ends up making for both for amazing hash. But they have bred for this for years. This is why you mentioned like hash bash ended up coming about and being so like that. So we knew that there ended up being a good amount of like hash competitors and hash makers in general, hashishians, true hashishians out there that like truly, know what the deal is, which they understand the history of old world connection, that we've been doing this for so long. We're just continuing it. We're just passing it on. It isn't ours. We didn't create it. We're just passing it on. We're learning a few things. We're fixing some stuff here and there. We're passing knowledge to everybody, and we're moving on. Somebody next generation will keep it going. It's been going on for hundreds of years.
Definitely. Yeah, so thank you. Sorry that I skipped over to Oklahoma.
Shout out to Michigan. You guys
Shout out
got
to
some
Michigan.
They go, they're freaking wild late weather, because now we're coming up to the summertime, the wintertime season too. So a lot of outdoor hash making from their fresh frozen from this, outdoor harvest and stuff too, which is crazy.
Outdoor Labs was the original.
That's it.
It is. So Oklahoma. Man, we went there when there was annual I don't even know how to describe it, because I think the part that we showed up on was just let's just say there was a bunch of bikers in town going around all throughout the hours making noise because of what had happened, and the bombing that took place out there. So incidentally, what it took place is that we actually ended out there while they were remembering what had happened to a community, and you can definitely feel the vibe as far as from the whole community and the people that you interacted with locally. You definitely could. So, with the Black Wall Street bombing, it was definitely something that it was just unbelievable. We had checked out a museum, and we kind of saw some photos, and shout out to anyone who still has a family line from that time, because I know that's something that they can't heal over in regards to how things were handled. But
there's only one lady left.
Yeah,
she's like 102.
Wow,
something like that, yo. Like this, she was like 6 or 7 when it happened. So accidentally, we ended up at the 100-year commemoration of the Tulsa Greenboro bombing of Black Wall Street, completely like by accident. It ended up being like this charged up energy, and even going outside, it was just odd because I guess just kind of like just being that like
And the
centennial
and the weather was odd too.
in the weather. But even still, it's Oklahoma's a little bit. You guys are a bit wild, yo. We saw a car. We was driving. I think we were driving back from Oklahoma. We were in Tulsa, right? And we ended up staying there the whole weekend. But we ended up leaving to go to Oklahoma City. I think it was on the way back. They were like the cops were chasing someone the opposite direction
Up the ramp.
up the ramp, like going. There was the up the ramp, off the ramp right there, but they were going backwards on the highway, and there was two cop cars behind her. I was like, "Yo, you guys are wilding out here." I was like, "This is some true, like,
Craziness. It was some definitely.
it's the
crazy.
true West. What can I say, right?"
It was very rough out there.
But they had, but listen, they had some amazing hash.
They did. They did.
They had some amazing hash, yo. Shout out to being like the industry is just so open. People are able to actually like just really get into it out there.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, again, it's another opportunity where, when you're not, over-regulated and you're able to, do some pheno hunting and you're allowed to really grow a couple plants to see what works or what doesn't work. It's a great opportunity for hash makers because at the end of the day, you have material that you can just go to town with and see how the hash turns out. So, here they are trying to find what's the best pheno, what people are going to enjoy as far as when it comes to cultivars. And then they have the other end benefit where now we have all these different phenos. We can kind of wash those and see how that works out. And you end up finding, even though that the cultivar wasn't the best, as far as when you use it as a flower format, but when it comes to the hash, the cultivar is real excellent. So, people are starting to get some really in-house kind of hash kind of plants that no one else would have because of all the capability and the work that they were able to do when they're going through their pheno. So, yeah, Oklahoma it was different. And the other thing about Oklahoma also is that it's a little bit tropically aligned. So you can actually have a lot of the more longer running types of cultivars outdoor and it will be fine because of the temperatures and how it is out there. So, I learned a lot about that space and it was very nice.
Yeah, I've talked to, who was it? Oh man, he was a pollen. He deals with pollen. He ends up actually hunting out males. He's out in Oklahoma, and a conversation that I ended up having with him is that he wanted to bring different cultivars from different parts of the country and learn very quickly that it was not that type of weather, but the ones from Jamaica were actually doing pretty well, and he was able to adapt them into the Oklahoma environment.
Right.
I was like, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Something that you were mentioning, right? And we ended up, when we were at the kimono house, son. So the Airbnb was this like big ass house, and it was like just kimonos everywhere, right? It was the coolest shit. Like, so we invited over B-Leaf to actually end up having a conversation, talking about hunting, and he was telling us how it was nice to be able to actually have enough, like legal access to be able to like pop through
do what
so
you need to
many.
do. Yeah, do what you need
It's
to
hundreds
do.
and thousands of seeds at a time. You got to be able to like literally visualize that. It's a different type of thing. That's how you're able to get like, what? That's the pheno that's actually, it might not be a great producer in flower, but it's amazing washer. Like, so maybe we can take that genetic and start inbreeding it into other pieces that are heavy producers to see if we can, it just takes so much time, and it's nice to have a state to be able to do something like that.
Definitely.
It was dope, but we were all walking around in kimonos though. Forget it. It was coolest shit ever, yo. That if you go to Airbnbs, try to go to some themed ones, yo. Honestly, you have a good time.
Definitely. Yeah. So, as far as that goes, full circle, we're back here on the East Coast. If you don't know what Resin Cup is, you have an opportunity to come and check us out in New York City on December 11th. It's going to be from 12 to 4. And we're going to have some Hashishian vendors. We're going to have a good Hashishian time. There may be or may not be an infused bar. There might be goodies and gifts.
Allegedly.
So with that said, we definitely want to make this more of a community experience. It's not just where, normally you go to a pop-up or whatnot. You're going to be able to talk with the vendors, and you're going to be able to chill out, relax, and enjoy the different terps that comes from the different flavors that are available. So, I look forward to it, because what's going to be unique about the National Resin Cup is that the competitors itself, right? You're going up against all the other ones who won in their state. And if you feel as though that you're better than them, guess what? You're going to have to show and tell. So, you know,
Keeping it simple.
we're definitely keeping it simple when it comes to that matter, as far as how Resin Cup is going to be. This one differs from all different Resin Cup. It's not just within one state where you're going against, with your local hash makers. This one kind of gives you more of a national kind of battle. And at the end of the day, you're going to be deemed the National Resin Cup champ. Either comes to rosin or either comes to melt. My partner always tell me that I need to elaborate more on what the rosin situation is about. I have two different methodologies that comes to it, just because of how I started into the hash, where hash was not, put into a mesh or a mesh bag, where you kind of pretty much try to keep the particulates out to get like this great return of oil, which depends on the temperature, how you produce the oil. You can get different consistency, and even if you go over certain temperatures, then you can even actually get it into an oil consistency. But what we're looking for is whatever style rosin that you feel as though is a top rosin when it comes to pressing out, hash. As far as that goes, the other consistency is melt. Melt is where you actually a little bit more gentle when it comes to extracting your resin. Sometimes it might be more of a hand paddle technique versus the machine technique, because when you hand paddle, you can create the more gentler cycle versus using the machine cycle, where there's other tricks and trades where you can actually, change the speed up. But let's just say that
Not just a dance move,
not just the dance move,
but the paddle.
but a paddling. So,
Way the water.
when it comes down to your technique and how you produce that melt, it should also look as though as it's rosin, but it's not. And we're looking for that type of, the type of hashishian that's going to be able to either produce the most cleanest rosin through the filtration system, or a hashishian that creates melt with no filtration system. And then you'll be DAB national, hashishian for your category of choice, and you'll be pretty much celebrated until next year when you come back to battle for your championship. That's one thing that you don't see with other competition. I'm gonna give the person the opportunity who wins to automatically get back into next year's competition with the entry. So,
That's what makes this national so already different, because we already ended up going to different regions, seeing who pick, finding the winners in those different regions. And now we're back full circle to New York on December 11th to be find the national one. But we're opening it up. It's like, we found the best out here. Now we're asking you, you think you're like that? Put it up against theirs too. We have two categories, because it was before, it was only one category.
It's one throughout the year. So when we go from state to state, there can only be one. And, pretty much if you're good at what you do, your craft will speak for what, if you're going to take first place. With this opportunity, because we're bringing in so many different, people throughout the year, we want to give them the opportunity to take either one or take both.
Wait, what?
I mean, they can enter, as far as the ones.
Oh, they can hit one for each.
One for each.
Yes. But and I think, and we went over this, right? Because there's different types of that you can end up going with, as far as organic, as far as dealing with hash making of different types. Because we could have ended up actually including carts. Right, and we could end up including. No, just hear me out. We could end up including a good amount of categories, specifically dealing with the organic side. And you fought me on like, nah. I was like, fine, whatever. So throughout the year, it was we're only finding like, who has that, who has that best rosin. And I think that I'm really happy that we added the melt category, because rosin is the new school. Melt is the
Traditional.
traditional school.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So it gives an opportunity for those who still champion air dry technique. Also, we didn't even talk about either if you're going to freeze dry or air dry. Those techniques also varies on what the person produces. Some people say that, if you know what you're doing, you actually get a higher return on a terpene profile, sometimes a higher return on the percentage of THC when you do the air dry technique versus the freeze dry technique, because freeze dry is still kind of new. You can overrun it and you can underrun it, and it's finding the medium for those resins for you to get the best perfection in regards to return whenever you produce your hash or whichever resin that you want to produce. So it's interesting, that we're heading into this here national resin cup. I'm really excited. As I mentioned, or I think I did mention once or twice, that some of the people who are competing are creating their own little like memes and whatnot and little videos, and they're having fun with it, and that's what we want to see. It's not your traditional, sponsored by certain kind of companies and whatnot or brands. It's more of the people who are part of the Resin Cup, the upcoming hash maker, the hash maker that loves just making the hash, and the little camaraderie is what we want to say. They're just having a little fun with each other, and it's great to see that, because we as a hash maker, man, there's the things that we went through in the past to get to where we are now, because things are more open. It's something where not everybody at one time really even talked about, because when it comes to making hash, you don't use a small amount, you use a large amount. Generally you're getting a couple garbage bags, and as far as that goes, that's something that you have to keep quiet. Where now, where things are a little bit more legal, and things are more open, so you get to see more hashitians that are kind of emerging back out of the scene, and sharing the love of the passion of making the hash. The other thing that I wanted to harp on about Resin Cup is that we're not exclusive, we're inclusive, meaning that if you love resin, you don't have to be a hash maker. You can just be a person who enjoys it. Well, I still, to some point, in some degree, I understand that we have to keep a tight circle, but I think we need to be a little bit more open with other folks as far as sharing this passion, so they can understand what are the great benefits of hash. Because if we keep it within just a certain amount of people, then people are never going to know what other benefits that the hash can also do, and why we love the hash. Of course, some cats love the flavor, some cats love just the how it affects them. And then you have some people who are like, it's their medicine too, because some of them cannot, use solvent when it comes to inhalation. They have to use something that's natural. So either you're burning the flower, which in the end has a lot of harsh carcinogenics for some people's lung, and they can't take that, especially somebody that might be asthma triggered, right? They might not be able to really burn as much flour, but with a small amount of dab of hash, they can also get the same medicinal benefits. So, there's different people out there that should learn about how therapeutic and how good hash is as well. And also, why we love making the hash, that terp, that chase, that flavor, that you smell something that you can only smell within the hash or within the resin that you capture.
So gotta acknowledge it. And it ends up being we talked about before as far as the whole solvent versus solvents. On the medical side, as far as like that, there is no debate. Right. It comes, between the difference if you potentially end up inhaling a solvent or non-solvent, there should be no debate on the medical side, period. But we've also acknowledged as far as like in the beginning that, we were talking about there's a small list of actual like plants that can actually are true washers that you actually get a good return from. Right. And there's a whole bunch that are not. Right. Generally, we end up having a lot of the citrus tend to be not good washers for the general part. But that's where I believe that the using a solvent to extract those specific concentrates, and obviously afterwards properly being oven vac out and everything being processed and making sure that it's tested like X amount, like the ppms, or everything ends up being great. across the board, not for medical reasons, right? There's that thing about it too, but the reason that it ended up actually initially coming about, which the initial reason ends up being more of medicinal or ceremonial.
Ceremonials and
technology has allowed us to now be able to extract something that before we couldn't with the solvent. So it has its place, but that's not what Resin Cup is about. If anybody will want to include that too, because we want to honor and actually continue the path of just. I mean, it literally still to this day making it with just beating some sticks on a fishnet stocking, on not fishnets, but like stocking.
Yeah, the silk screens that they have.
That's it.
Ones, so different grades of silk screen to capture different trichome heads.
Just
beating the material to remove the trichome. So
and then sifted it through, and then pressing it, and they're still crushing it. All that technology, all that gigantic 30-gallon, 40-gallon, 50-gallon, like tubs spinning around and stuff like that. My man with no shoes is still making hash, bro. So recognition to that's why I love the fact that the National has the melt side, because it pays, a little pizza box tech, man, like bringing it back to something like that too. But obviously now just need to do some freeze
dry tech.
Yeah. So kind of like up a little bit too.
Yeah, the scientific grade freeze dryer is what
Yeah.
Shout out to the industry on that matter. I think there's like 2-3 companies. Originally, there was like one company cornering the market. Now you have other people creating, their own kind of freeze dryers, and it's something more on the commercial end. I understand it's needed, but again, the traditionalist in me, air dry is something where you have to pay attention to what you're doing. Because you fuck that up, then it's over. I think with the freeze dryer tech, it's a lot of forgiveness for some people who truly don't know the traditional ways, and that's why it is what it is going on. I think.
What did we say was? We call that. Do you call it? I know I call it. I call that high end keef. If you overuse that freeze dryer, you got high end keef. You got it. And this is where the education of learning the traditional methods and applying the new method like that to make sure it really is like you got to catch the eye, you got to know, you just got to like see it. I ended up educating myself on how to do it, and it's not easy. And one of the things that I just knew with that, I wasn't washing the right type. Right? I had plant particulates in mind. Like when I started really scoping it out and like really looking at the granules, like I was like, holy crap, there they are right there. Like green as hell. Like just seeing the different the process like that educated me. And then when it came to like actually, seeing the freeze dryers and all right, it's just about timing and all that stuff. Same thing with the oven vacs too, even with the solvent. It's about time. You can't have it too high. You can't, it's the amount of time. It's really seeing that eye catching that eye thing to really make sure that you keep keeping it at the right tip. Like it's like rightness.
Nice.
Yeah. Let me encompass that whole rant into just rightness. The hash maker has to know when the trichome head is at its ripest for collection.
I definitely agree with that. As far as the ripeness when it comes to finding the perfect time for you to harvest your trichome heads, it's very important.
Very important. And that's something that I don't think that, people understand it when it comes to this, like the amount of material versus the amount of return largely depends on how the cultivator, did, and specifically what cultivar there is. It's something that was cool. It was something that I feel like needs to be understood, especially by the judges, 100%. Hence, active hash makers.
That's 100%. That's why we when it comes to picking the judges, I want somebody that can actually break down what's happening as far as when they look at it, and then they're able to break down the smell of it as far as, is it have the right smell? Because sometimes, you can smell if somebody hasn't dried the resin right, and then you have, degradation starts to happen, or even as, the scariest part is it's moldy, right? So, and then some people, they think by pressing it that it can be hidden, but no, once you press it, everything is exposed. That's another thing about when it comes to washing resin, you can really tell, how the cultivar or the person who's grown the cultivar is actually taking care of the plant, because you can determine by, how many heads you're collecting that kind of pulled a little bit early, or as we mentioned earlier, maybe this is not the one to be washed by, ice water technique. But if we know that the known cultivar is already one that is made to be washed, and yet it's not dropping the resin that it normally would in certain bags, then I can tell that, you didn't bring her to full maturity. And so, at the end of the day,
the guy told me it's like a 10% washer. Why didn't you get that return? He was like, bro, you cut it like 3 weeks early. Like, are you kidding me? Like, all those trichome heads were like clear. What do you mean? It's not ripeness, man. Right, you gotta ripen.
Trying to get that nice golden, that creamy looking kind of hash by cutting it early.
Those facts. No, don't gloss over it. Don't gloss over it. Come on, man. Like, I like the critique of it. If you're gonna really try to claim, the thing about it is, right, that we recognize that Old World has already, plant material in it, but it still tastes great, right? And there's a fermentation, the curing of like long-term, like temple ball hash, burying it, different type of cultures do different type of things, right? But when you're trying to say that you're claiming your shit is so clean, that your shit is so like, I caught every granule perfectly, like I did everything I did perfectly, and then what it turns out that you're just cheating on the color by cutting early.
That happens, man. That's happening. And then we want to talk about, there's other techniques that people are doing.
Ripeness.
CRC technique, things of that nature. Reintroducing terps, things of that nature.
Now, I don't mind the mixing now. Like of, let's say, I don't know, 2 pounds of GG and like 1 pound of like blueberry. Tell me that shit wouldn't be like some of the most amazing, like.
And again, it depends on what the person
somebody
is.
do that.
What's the terps you're chasing, right? So that's going to be something more of a gas with a sweet, right? As far as what the person enjoys, and then the effect from those different types of strains. It all depends on what a person wants when it comes to enjoying a good resin. So our judges are able to decipher what we're discussing as far as going in depth and looking at the resin, because they're actively also trying to improve what they're doing. I try to choose people who have absolute love for hash and resin itself. One and the same. Some people may say it differs, but the person that truly loves hash and truly, still enjoy working with it daily when it comes to, as far as separating the resins and then choosing which selection you're going to put together, and then you're going to press that out. That's what we're looking at as far as when the judges are looking at the information and the judges we're using. So,
but a judge is the one that like immediately spotted a CRC potential.
Yeah,
and that's why it's so important to have an active hash maker to understand what, like, yo, this
doesn't
is
look
that.
right. That's not how the resin rolls.
I was like, what
so yeah, at the end of the day, and then you get to learn between the filtration. So a lot of things that you learn. There's some interviews with actually the judges. You guys can check out those past episodes so you can understand, how they look at the resin. But
actually, part of the judging part, during the event, we have an active
A live judge.
a live judging. We end up bringing one of the judges in and they run through it.
That's right.
The New York one.
Yeah, that was
He was taking such a terp nap. He was that one was cool. That one was cool. It was crazy because shout out to DC Scrogger, yo. He was like, when he was done, I make sure that I ended up having somebody standing there, don't make sure nobody disturbs him.
right.
He's doing live, blah blah. He went through it. He was like, I was like, just leave him alone. He just, he ran through that shit. It was crazy, and he gave an amazing judging of it. But again, you got to be somebody that's been doing it and is doing it in order to like really come out on some I understand what's happening.
Definitely. Yeah, man. So as you mentioned, live judging. You guys who attend Resin Cup in New York on December 11th from 12 to 4, you'll be able to check out the judge going through the entries. There might be some other people who might be able to just try out the entries. You never know. We're not going to give that away right now.
Not just
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the reason ends up being, right, is let's be real about it. We ended up debating this for a little bit too. Ended up being how much we ended up wanting from a contestant, because we were looking to do actual professional judging. So to do a professional judging, it isn't like you don't need like a lot to if you know what everything is and you're like that, you don't need like 2 grams of one thing to like be able like the per judge. So we're able to actually cut it down to an amount where it's very easy for anybody to be able to enter.
Definitely. Yeah. And then in regards to that, there may or may not be some stuff going on. I don't know.
No, you can say it and just say allegedly at the end. Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly.
This, and that's something too that we need to actually like, because I feel maybe now too, especially with all this gray popping out from all this stress, son. I feel that now too, like, you guys got to be careful what you're putting out there. Right now, we're just sharing information about a gathering of individuals to see who has the best technique.
That's it.
That's it, right?
That's a good way.
If this was, I wish this was Kung Fu. I wish this was one of those, like, we're just meeting together very, like, it's always cool, like in the movies, right? And I wish I could see it like for real life. Like, it's just everybody's very calm surrounding the square, right? Except the 2. And it's just like so like, focused on
what the outcome is.
That's it, nothing else. And there isn't like, it's not a tournament. It's not like all this like that. It's just this one exhibition between these 2 different styles.
That's it. I mean, at the end of the day, it is like a Kung Fu kind of thing, because, you ultimately, somebody's going to be the grand master or the grand champion, right? And that's what Resin Cup is looking for, who's able to execute to the end with the judges.
I like that whole that Kung Fu thing, because you got to think about it, right? Like the rosin one is the new style, right?
That's right.
The hash, the melt is the old style, and they're not meeting in like battling, right? Because they're both great in their own side, in their own craft.
Definitely.
But they're meeting to like exhibit and shit too. It's just like even the thing about it is like we're not this isn't a competition between the 2. No. We're recognizing that each one has its own place.
100%. Definitely. That's where we so I mean, at the end of the day, it is a good thing that to have healthy competition, because without healthy competition, there's never going to be any change. It's going to be the same thing over and over. So with healthy competition, you can definitely get, some kind of upgrade on your knowledge. Maybe there's something you learn from the other person, or just having a good time. That's it.
Wash. So I'm wondering now, now that we this is our first year, right?
Hmm.
And we're getting into the nationals.
Hmm.
That was a long dramatic pause.
Of course it was.
Pause. Um, I'm stoned a little bit, so
It happens
it's
sometimes, you know.
I tried. What was it? This other one? One of these other ones. This
Is
one
it?
is
Is
King.
it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This cut up pine is nice.
Yeah,
I
it's
like the
different.
flavors though. Anyway, so yeah, well, you know what? Why don't we get into that conversation more dealing with like what do you see kind of coming out as far as what do we I know what I gravitated to versus what we ended up seeing in the industry or excuse me the regions
Hmm. Hmm.
uh and because we feel that each one's its own like dojo like its own like
Yeah, its own house,
its
its
own
own
house.
kimono's house.
So if you want to tie it into its own like dragon house or whatever, like
Yeah, it is. I mean, each remember that each region, just like when it comes to different cultivars, each region has its own kind of flavor that they enjoy. So just because maybe here we might have more of the rubber gas kind of love on the east, and then when you head out to the mid, it might be more dessert style with a hint of it, and then you go out west, it might be like full dessert. So you go down south, it might be like dessert with a hint of fucking pine. You never know. You know what I mean? So I mean, it all depends on within that region because what I try to do also is that the judges are also local to each region. That's one thing that I failed to mention earlier. But so the judges that were judging Michigan Terps was within that region, so they pretty much have that understanding of what's going on in the region. It's not like somebody from wherever else, and then they
different
think
palettes.
right. They think that that's what that region enjoys. With Resin Cup, we're trying to give each region its own merit based on its own local judge, and that's another thing that differs from most competitions. So, as far as that goes, I've been really having fun with this, man, because there's always been what I feel when it comes to the hash community. There is a division amongst us, and with this competition, I'm trying to gap that division, meaning that you have your traditionalists, and then you have your new age guys. So, with that
I
said,
don't know why I can't. I'm both. I'm
you're
so both. I'm so both. Because
it's
it's not like one or the other for me. It's just why can't it be both,
well,
man? And everybody chooses, but it's true. Most people choose one or the other.
mhm,
You
mhm,
don't find to me like because you know what it is though. It has to do what I was telling you earlier. Like the first time that I ran across melt,
mm,
it ended up being in an event, and this guy's like, "Yo, check this out! It got warm in my pocket, but look what happened." And it ended up being like this goo on the side. I was like, "Oh, what is that like?" I thought it was, some kind of solvent,
sauce, yeah.
right? Sometimes I was like, "Damn, what is that?" And he was like, "Oh, it's bubble hash." I'm like, "Bubble hash?" He's like, "Yeah, it looks like granule." He ended up, like that. I was like, and then look, that was the first time that I ever got introduced to melt, so I knew what it was
Mhm,
right
mhm.
from the very beginning. I knew I had the perfect example, and I chased it after that. And I only knew like two, maybe three people that had that skill. This one being one of them, and other, people out in the region. Like it was that specific, because it's not an easy thing to do. This is before the use of freeze dryers.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah, I mean, at the end
Yo.
of the day, this is where the division lies because some cats are like, oh, well, if I use a freeze dryer, I'm definitely making sure that there's no water. If there's no water, then you're not going to have any oxidization. Then you're not going to have any kind of possibility of getting mold. And then when it comes to air dry technique, you definitely have to pay attention to your heat and your humidity because what can happen is if you have the heat too much and the head starts to melt, then you end up capturing the water within the hash, and that's a no-go. So, when it comes to drying hash, air dry technique, you really have to make sure that that moisture is captured out fully before you would actually start pressing it, or whatever you like to do after.
That's that I like knowing after, and I think that's part of the education that I think a lot of people don't do. And, they just know, just put it all together and just press it.
Yeah.
Like,
It's all good. At the end of the day, there's also nuances when it comes to drawing resin, especially if you're doing it at a commercial scale. So you definitely get props on that. But the whole point of this thing is that we want to celebrate what the resin is, and we don't have to choose a side as far as when it comes to celebrating hash together. Is what Resin Cup is also trying to bring to the forefront. So we're gonna have fun. I believe it's gonna be in Manhattan. Come on to Manhattan. Come out to New York.
come out to the east.
Have some fun. I understand you may see things on the news, but generally the area that we pick is a very nice area. Or if it's not looking so nice, it's still a safe area, so you don't have to really worry about what you're seeing out there. But I want you to come on out, enjoy the city. I mean, it's 4 hours of your time, and then you still have a little time in the city to go walk around, check out, eat some food. So especially after the medicated bar, allegedly.
Is it there? The thing about it, New York is currently in like a major like limbo state, right? Because everything hasn't fully dropped when it comes to like all the like legislation. So everything's still like
working.
So allegedly is I was there. What happened? I was like, I can't remember.
Exactly.
I think we need to like, truly like just get back to that point of view. Like, I don't remember nothing. Too much.
It's too much.
Because you know what though too? The hash, those methods, right? Back then, it was difficult to do. Before the air dry method is something that it's like you really got to be really vigilant. I mean, you got to be vigilant with the freeze dryer as well.
And you can over dry with air drying too.
High end keep.
Yeah, you can have high end keep as well. So I mean, there's a medium to be played, and
with the pressing that though, that's what I'm saying. Like,
and again,
and they're getting good yields. I'm not saying they ain't getting good yields.
It all depends.
And this is what the industry generally like that ended up evolving to. Like what it is currently. And this we see it too, the debate between the solvent and the solventless, right? And there is I think it's stupid because it's just one
a person's preference of medicine.
No, it's just an extraction. Either way, you're just trying to collect the essential oil inside the trichome heads, which by the way, dope trophies. For sure.
Shout out to Danny Campglass. We appreciate you. The Grateful Head Shop, appreciate you as well. And Biggs, thank you. For with this nice piece here. So definitely the glass from Danny Campglass. Danny is pretty sick. He's been helpful throughout the year. He pretty much produced pretty much all the trophy sets for the first one that we had done out of New York, but he was able to give us the one from Maine, Michigan, Oklahoma, and now we're here back, and he's going to be giving out the national one. So thank you, Danny, for the work that you do, bud.
And the cool thing about these trophies is that first and foremost, the regional ones are different from each other. And this is a national one that's still different from the regional ones. So it isn't like, like you getting a whole bunch of copies or like that. It ends up being unique. And generally we discussed this too for a while, that a lot of times you end up getting a glass piece that you can end up, using, which is amazing, right? But we want somebody to be like, yo, you got it, or like be able to like, yo, it's an award trophy. It really is like, yo, you're the national hashishian, like, or the New York or the Maine, the New England one, like, yo, just I think anything too, just keeping that, authenticity with all that too. And again, we ended up thinking about this last year, and we've been running through it. So this is just our full entire year and this is going to be our 5th event.
Yeah.
4 regions.
Definitely dope, man.
So yeah, I think we did a pretty good first time go around year for a good solid, hash competition to see what kind of hashishians are out there within the region. And now we're gonna end up opening up to the hash, and we already found them. They're already competing. We found the ones for the region. They're already competing. We're bringing them to everybody. Let's go. Who else is out there?
Definitely.
Winner take all.
Yeah. So it's going to be a great time. If you're a lover of the hash, definitely check us out. We're going to wrap up here shortly. Is there any projects you want to talk about that you're doing currently as far as coming up as well?
Well, I mean, we're just talking about now too. We'll have the December 18th last Gene Traders of the year. That's to get ready now for the indoor kind of like, winter season, and kind of start, moving around the country again, dealing with gene traders and, providing genetics for people to start, cultivating their own. What we always encourage, right?
Definitely.
Grow your own. And who knows, you might end up finding one of those like, hashers, those like heavy producing, or you might make one of those. That's great, because that list is short of actual plants that wash at a high rate that ends up being anyone above 5%. Those are called unicorns.
Definitely.
Like you mentioned earlier.
Definitely. Yeah, the unicorns are great. I mean, it's the beauty of the eye of the beholder, right? Meaning that what you see and what you get from what you wash is generally how you're going to label it, right? So sometimes these unicorns happen, and these unicorns are something where it's really cherished by a true hash maker, where once you get that certain one, that cut probably doesn't circulate anymore, and it's just in-house.
What I see often too, heavy like cross-withing with it for a little bit, and then it just dials back. It doesn't end up actually catching general like wave when it comes to like it being bred into it. You end up having like maybe like 1 or 2 lines of like that offspring, like that parent offspring, but not too often, like much more than that.
Gotcha.
So that's why this continues to be a short list. You were like, like Grease Monkey, right? Like you would have thought that would have continued to like really end up being pumped out in the crosses, but it was, and then it would end up dial back again. But still it ended up holding its thing. So grow the list is what I say. Grow the list.
Yeah, man. So I'm looking forward to next year's Resin Cup. After we finish up this National Resin Cup, we're going to be adding 2 more different states. So be on the lookout for that. You can always go to theresincup.com to check out the information. IG is Resin Cup. So I think _ not sure. I should know, but you'll figure it out. You'll see the Resin Cup logo made by this man right here. So if you ever need some kind of marketing material, don't forget to hit him up. I think as far as that goes, if you have any other housekeeping items, you're going to wrap it up here shortly.
That's right. I'm also on the side, I guess, the creative director also too for branding agency, specifically dealing with cannabis industry, medical rec, even advisory groups dealing with genetics, advisory groups dealing with cultivation habits, and even still we're trying to get into a little bit more of like crediting individuals in the sense of how the product is being made, right? We want to know. It's like no different than food. It's no different than, it's about freshness, and how fresh is your product, how clean is your product. We want to really move into, helping set a standard of what to do, because something that's heavily missing with every single state is proper regulation for standards, mold standards, remediation standards. In my opinion, I think there should be. Go ahead.
Burn the shit. I mean,
It's
at the end,
crazy, yo.
remediation is just a sad thing that, when it comes to this industry, certain part of this green industry, ROI is the most important thing versus the actual person or the individual who's using this sacred plant. So what happens here at the end of the day is, they've figured out some ways to save what they can from their moldy or fucking early disgusting cannabis. And then there's also cats who are cleaning up not so good stuff with the CRC tech, like I mentioned, or reintroducing terps just for a ROI. And if you're paying attention what you're doing, there shouldn't be any failure. But I understand this shit happens.
It's about investments, right? They're
Right.
looking at it heavily on that. It's understandable. Like, well, it's business, blah blah. And let's acknowledge it for what it is. That's understandable. But listen, like, if people were able to do it and still do it today with a whole air drying pizza box method, right? And able to pass tests, and you have all this machinery and you still have to fucking process it, like remediate that shit to order to put it on the shelf, bro.
It's disgusting. That's not.
It is what it is, but I guess investments are investments, right?
Definitely. So with that situation, man, cheers to those who actually dedicated to the craft. Those who know, keeping the plant healthy and creating great medicine and great recreation. I guess now is the thing, but adult use is a better terminology. We when you're an adult, you're more responsible. We don't want to say that using cannabis that people are irresponsible.
So, the responsibility, accountability, or whatever. Yeah. So this is the person I ended up actually wanting to shout out. That's out there.
Go ahead.
So we toured, facilities, right? And that ended up being like, completely like integrated, like from back end to front, right? Our favorite, but more his favorite, right, ended up being the individual that was actually making the press or putting the hash together. Within each company, within each corporation, there's like individuals out there that are the reason that company's product is so amazing. And no diss to the company. Again, you chose a winner, by like that individual. And let's keep it real. Like, you might end up, we always have the best. Yeah, but you give credit to the guy that's like, washing it, pressing it, this and like that too. No matter if it's in-house, because because we're touring a facility, I'm looking at like this, like that. And the second it comes to like this, like, like we talk to the guy who's pushing the button. You talk to the guy who's like, that paddle,
making the resin come alive. Man, we can go on and on. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. As I said in the beginning, don't forget to share, like, comment, hit that notification button on. What I've done now is we're going to be doing this, the podcast once a month. So the next episode is when we're getting ready to get into Resin Cup. We might come back with another episode and talk about what's going on as far as how the competition is shaping up, and maybe we might have a judge or two available for the next episode to kind of deep dive of what's going on. But for now, I hope you enjoyed the episode, and thank you so much for tuning into the Terps of the Beast Coast.